What's going on, Falcon fan? This your boy Ricardo coming back at you with another video. We are 3 days away from the 2025 season to kick off. Our Atlanta Falcons are back at training camp. They show up on Wednesday, the 23rd, and the festivities get to start on the 24th. So today we're going to be talking about just training camp, what that entails. We're going to talk about Michael Penix Jr. and how important this season is for him to become that face of the franchise for the future and for the present. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about the 2024 and the 2025 draft class and the significance of those two classes, especially looking at the season in 2025. So, guys, with that being said, if you have not already, go ahead and please subscribe to the channel. Please hit that notification bell so you know I drop another video. Please hit the like button so I know you guys like hear to talk about. Then please share my video throughout YouTube universe so more people can hear me talk about. That's right, these Atlanta Falcons. What's up, Dante? I ain't heard from you in a long time, big dog. What's up? What's up? What's up? So let's get to it, guys. The first topic, like I said, we're gonna talk about training camp. So, like I said, the Atlanta Falcons show back up at training camp. Training camp this week, the 24th. That's actually 11 open practices this year. The last two being actually joint practices with the Tennessee Titans. That's on the if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the 11th and the 12th, or the 12th and 13th. So you just have to look those dates up. But 11 practices, if you guys can recall, last year they was doing renovations and there were no open practices for us as a fan base. So they did have two practices that they hosted at a high school out there, and they also hosted a open practice at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But this year, be back at normal, guys. Be back up on the hill, and we can get to see the Atlanta Falcons. I know there's a lot of excitement. If you have not already looked out there, the first 3 days of this year's open practice are already sold out. Yep, so it's just usually $5 tickets to get in, but the first 3 days are sold out. So you can see the excitement from the fan base, and we got a new shiny new toy, Michael Penix Jr. We're going to talk about him in just a new minute. We got a new overall defense to see what these guys going to bring. Got a new defensive coordinator. Good riddance to Jimmy Lake, the base of what he was able to bring to the table last year. And so we definitely excited. The fan base, you can feel the energy across the city, and all the Falcon fans, all the content creators. Everybody has optimism, but let's not be fooled, guys. We pretty much have optimism every year. Not as delusional as Cowboy fans. I mean, all we wanted our team to do is just make the playoffs, right? To get out of the funk that in that 8-year drought of not being in the playoffs. Last time Atlanta Falcons was in the playoffs in 2017, so that's what we want. So it's going to be a huge thing coming back 2025 season. Like I said, all the optimism there. Now it's up to these guys to deliver. And when they do, we'll be there to root them on. So there you have it, guys. Atlanta Falcons training camp starts on Thursday. Let's see who's going to be out there. We're going to see who start injured. We had a couple of guys that missed mandatory mini camp. Guys like Kyle Pitts, guys like Troy Anderson, DeMarco Ellums coming back. Braylon Trice was coming back, right? We're going to see if those guys going to actually start on the injury list or on the injury report, or are they going to actually be out there for training camp? So that's going to be interesting to see. Some of those guys really need to have a really good season. Troy Anderson, Kyle Pitts, DeMarco Ellums, being the guy that had a good footing, a good footing in last year, before he went down. But now, bringing in Jordan Fuller, drafting Xavier Watts, so he could be the outside man looking in. So it's important for the Marco Helms to come back, and get him a defined role here on this team. So that's going to be one of the things we're definitely going to look at to start that off. Probably won't go full practice until after, the first 4 days probably. They probably go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, take a day off, and then that Tuesday they probably go full pass. It's usually how they do. We'll just have to see. But got to get ramped back up. So we won't see any padded practice start this weekend, but we'll definitely get to see these guys out there. It's supposed to be hot, so be ready for that. Unfortunately, I will not be there on Thursday because I'll be out of town, but I'll definitely be there on Saturday. And I know a lot of people. Like I said, all three events already sold out, so it's going to be a lot of people there. So hope to see you guys there, and we can chop it up and talk about some Atlanta Falcons football. All right, so there you have it, guys. The training camp. Hold on just a minute. All right. Here we go. Okay, so let's get to the next topic I want to talk about today, and that's Michael Penix Jr. Right, and specifically the talk of the town. Right, so I just talked about the sold out crowds that's going to be out there open practice, and let's be honest, one of the main reasons everybody has so much optimism and why the crowd is already sold out because of Michael Penix Jr. Right, um, then the Falcons got another black left-handed quarterback. Does that rings a bell? Right, got to go back all the way to 2000. Right, when the young guy got drafted out of Virginia Tech, came in and turned the city upside down. Right, the flash that he had, everything that he brought to the table was just awesome. So Michael Penix come in, another left-handed guy, got an arm like a rocket. Already had big plays that we was all excited to see last year. I mean, the poise that he showed and taking two of the last three games into overtime. Fortunately, our defense can hold up, but Michael Penix doing those last minute drives to tie the game for the Atlanta Falcons, something special, and gave everybody optimism for what you know potentially he could be for years to come. All right, so when we looking at Michael Penix Jr. and the reason why I broached this topic because um, we seen this before, right? We seen a quarterback just in recent here. Speaking of a guy like Desmond Ritter, played the last three games of the season. Everybody had so much optimism about what he was going to be able to bring to the table. Unfortunately, um, this season pretty much was a disaster, right? The guy had only 12 touchdowns. He had 12 interceptions and 12 fumbles. And the last play I can remember Desmond Ritter throwing is that Carolina game when he threw the ball directly to the guy going out of bounds in the sideline. So I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Michael Penix Jr. I think they're two totally different quarterbacks. I think Michael Penix Jr. is probably ahead of where Desmond Ritter probably was going into his second season as a full starter, like Michael Penix is right now. Of course, we got a whole new offensive scheme there, so it's going to be different. But at the same time, we want to be able to allow Michael Penix to have some kind of grace, right? Because he is a rookie. Um, he has not even played a full season yet, so it's a lot of things that we might want to see from what's going on. T. Terry might want to see from Michael Penix, but we got to make sure and allow him, the time to grow. But this is an important season for him, um, and you know they put out list, right? They put out this the time of the off season when all the lists come out about the records and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, it's always about the quarterback. It's always going to be about the quarterback, and how the quarterback plays. Last year, for an example, right? When Kirk Cousins was playing well, Atlanta Falcons was 6-3, despite the defense not being up to par. Right, the defense was ended up 23rd in the league last year. But if you really watched it, they probably were worse than that. Um, Going into week 10, the Atlanta Falcons only had like 11 sacks. Right now, they ended up with 31, and I really believe that um, Raheem Morris kind of put his his hands in there to kind of help out a little bit, and that's the reason why it turned around. But you know, just to say, before Kirk Cousins started to play bad, the Atlanta Falcons was leading the division, and we was we was there. We was finna host a playoff game, division around. I mean, wild card round, right? That was the plan. But once the quarterback play starts to falter, um, that was all. That's what it was. So basically, what I'm saying is that Michael Penix just need to play solid football, right? Um, and if he do that, I think the Atlanta Falcons going to be just fine. That's what we need to see from him. Um, we want to see the explosive plays that he's going to be able to deliver. But this is an important season for him. This is an important season for him. This is an important season for Raheem Morris. But it's an important season for the Atlanta Falcon franchise. There are so many NFL teams that's still in search of their franchise quarterback. All right, not all teams has had the luxury of a Green Bay Packers, right? Where if you look at their quarterback, um, history over the years, they went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, now to Jordan Love, right? That's almost, if you count all those years, almost 4 decades of good quarterback play. Right now, they only probably got 2 Super Bowls to show for it, but um, being in the hunt, getting into the tournament, that's what you really want to do every year because that's the only way you're gonna have opportunity to play for Super Bowls is get into the playoffs, right? And unfortunately, since Matt Ryan left, and Atlanta Falcons so fortunate, we went from Michael Vick, you know, bringing up, like I said, how high the Atlanta Falcons, I mean, how high the seed was with Michael Vick. Now, unfortunately, Michael Vick only had 2 winning seasons, in his 6 years here with the Atlanta Falcons. But however, it was exciting, and everybody would just had so much optimism about this team, right? They bring in Matt Ryan for 14 years. Um, Atlanta Falcons always had opportunity. Now the teams around Matt Ryan was never, um, the best, right? We talked about this. You can go back and look at some of my videos. I talked about, Matt never having top 10 defenses and things like that. So everything was put on his shoulders, and that's probably why they didn't win as much. But the truth of the matter is, during Matt Ryan's tenure, that's the winningest that the Atlanta Falcons have ever done in Falcons history, and that's just a fact. So just having a stable quarterback, um, that's what we want to see. So that's why I feel like this is important, right? The Atlanta Falcons, they gambled. They played a quarterback $180 million, and then 3 months later they went and drafted another quarterback. So you know, it was the emphasis to fix the quarterback position. After 3 years of not getting it done, they make sure they double down. Um, some people might want to say they wasted, right? They wasted $180 million. If you was just going to draft Michael Penix. So, but in any case, at this point, he's here. It's going to be really important for him to have. I don't have, he don't have to have a superstar season, right? It'd be nice if he could have a CJ Stroud, season, or a Jaden Daniels season. That would be awesome. But he does not have to do that. He just need to be solid. He needs to make sure that he plays complimentary football because let's be honest, the star on the offense is really Bijan Robinson, right? If you get a ball to Bijan and let him do what he do, I think the Atlanta Falcons offense is going to be just fine. But Michael Penix needs to be able to do his part, and if he could just show the flashes and build on what he was able to show in those 3 games, I think it's going to be um, really exciting this year for our Atlanta Falcons on the offensive side of the ball. So that's what I'm thinking about Michael Penix. It's going to take time, right? One good thing about him, no NFL teams got tape on him just as of yet, right? You think about a guy like CJ Stroud, kind of had a little sophomore slump, right? Jaden Daniels he's going to go through that this year. Teams got tape out on him, So it's going to be interesting to see. Michael Penix got the benefit, right? Because it's still an unknown quality. Seeing him, they can go back and look at college tape, but you know how he's going to run this Atlanta Falcons offense is it's a mystery, right? And it's more of a mystery because I'm pretty sure in those three games, you know, Zach Robinson really didn't open up the book like he should have to the extent that he could have, right? So um, I think it's going to be really exciting to see what Michael Penix is going to bring to the table. However, I think it's really important for him to be able to deliver because if he could do that, this 2025 season does not have to be um, a a deep playoff run, but it still will be a success if the Atlanta Falcons can look and say, now we have our franchise quarterback going into the future. Let's get to some of these comments here. Um, why the Falcons started training camp on Thursday? That was always the date. It's some teams started early. I know a lot of teams showed rookies showed up on Sunday or Monday, right? Or today. But the Atlanta Falcons decided not to have rookies, show up early. They just had the rookie showing when everybody else showing, right? I think it's a good choice, right? Because most of the most of the guys that they want to be able to do something is that young guys anyway. So they come as a team. Um, Now teams that got new coaches, they always show up early anyway. Teams that's playing in the Hall of Fame games, they show up a little early because they have to get stuff going because they play that first the extra preseason game. So, but for the most part, you know, some rookies showed up, and then some teams showed up. But the Atlanta Falcons, they always be in the 24th. So that's why they're starting on Thursday. Good question. D Sloan said, "What's up, Rakundo? Can we start off week 1 already?" I know, but it's a great question you asked about starting off week 1. But there are so many questions that needs to be answered first before we get ready to week 1. So many questions to be answered, right? Um, for an example, how is this defensive scheme is going to look, right? You got Jeff Albrecht, who was with Raheem Morris, in the Dan Quinn years here at Atlanta Falcons, but both of those guys kind of split up, right? And if you go look at the defense Raheem Morris been running since he's been away from Atlanta Falcons, you know, more Vic Fangio, Brian Flores type defense. And then you look at what Jeff Albrecht been running, it's more Robert Sala, you know, mixture of Dan Quinn type defense, right? More wide nine, things like that, that textile defense that we've been hearing about, right? And you hear Jeff Albrecht saying that it's going to mix the blend of both of those defenses together, and create the Atlanta Falcons defense. So it's going to really be interesting, like for an example, trying to go to Vic Fangio running a 3-4 when we don't have a big nose tackle, being able to stop the run, I'm kind of iffy on that. I think we should go more to the 4-3 front, so we can be able to stop the run. But then you want to get your pass rushers out there, um, and those guys, James Pierce, Jalen Walker, you want to get those out there. So I think they would be, benefit more in the 3-4. So it's really interesting to see how they're gonna, you know, deploy these guys. You got Brandon Dorley is a good defensive end, in some schemes, and him and Zach Harrison. We heard Nate Ali talking about that, right? Rook, could he play a nose tackle? I don't think so. Maybe David could. David's over 312 pounds, so maybe he's the guy that could probably play at the nose tackle position. But if you guys remember my last video, I talked about one of my concerns on defense was being able to stop the run. I still believe that's one of their main focus on defense is being able to stop the run because we don't have no girth, right? You want to be able to keep, those offensive linemen off your linebackers and things like that. So I just interested to see how they're going to play this defense. So know we want to get ready for week 1, but it's so many questions that need to be answered. And you know, one of the questions, one of the main questions is going to be Michael Penix Jr. And that's T. Terry says Michael Penix Jr. needs to stay healthy. So that's another point that I wanted to make. One of the things that, if you go back and look at Michael Penix Jr. Um, college career, you go back to the Indiana days, he couldn't stay healthy. I mean, that's just one of the things that hurt him so much is not being able to stay on the field. But however, when he did play, you saw how he was able to, you know, transform that Indiana offense, to get them in some contentions to some years there. But he just could not stay healthy, and he changed this game a little bit when he went to Washington, right? A lot of less running, right? I mean, you got to look at this guy. He looked up to Michael Vick, so and so he was, you know, an athlete. He still is an athlete, but he changed his game, right? More of a pocket passer now. He still had the mobility and things like that. He has not lost that, but being able to T Terry point is to stay healthy, I think is huge. Um, so that's why this year is also important, right? Now, on the bright side of that is we do have a great backup quarterback in play. So he do miss a couple games. No season-ending injuries. Knock on wood. Um, we have Kirk Cousins in the fold. That, like I said, still um, is a solid quarterback. He's just not the starter anymore. And he's 2 years removed from, having an Achilles injury, so he should be a little bit more mobile himself. So that's that's one of the key points for Michael Penix. He needs to stay healthy, um, and that's one of the reasons why teams were skeptical of drafting him in the first place because of the health concerns. But obviously, the Atlanta Falcons did their due diligence, got with doctors and things like that, and was, you know, comfortable with his health concerns and felt like he could be a quarterback that could be the face of Atlanta Falcons for the next 10 or so years. So that's what we're gonna um, dwell on. And based off what we seen last year, um, it really has a potential for Michael Penix Jr. to actually do what we're hoping that he's gonna be able to do. So, guys, this is a big year. This is a big year for Michael Penix Jr. The Atlanta Falcons offense. Good thing he won't have to do it by himself, right? He has the necessary weapons. So he's not been put on the island. Atlanta Falcons was top 10 in offense last year. Yes, they were, believe it or not, right? They were, um, and rushing and passing. Yes. So they have the right tools. They got the right personnel. Just got to have the right signal caller to make sure that it keeps the train going and don't have, you know, mistakes after mistakes after mistakes. And, one thing quarterbacks hate to hear is being a game manager. But being a game manager means you don't turn over the ball, you don't give it to the other team, you make the right plays, you're consistent. That's all we're asking Michael Penix to do. And if he do that, like I said, I think the Atlanta Falcons have opportunity to have a really good year on the offensive side of the ball. All right, let's get to the last point today that I want to talk about, which I think is this next topic is so interesting, and it's interesting because this is one of the times where I have seen that most of the picks from the year before is an unknown commodity. It's an unknown commodity. And we talking about guys like Brandon Dorless. We talking about guys like Brandon Trice, right? Um, talking about guys like Ruko Roro. Like, we really do not know how good these guys are, right? Brandon and Braylon, 100%, right? Braylon got hurt. Brandon Dorless probably had, didn't suit up for majority of the season. So we definitely did not get an opportunity to see those guys. Rook is filling in for Grady Jarrett. So the 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 pressure that's on him is probably more than the other two. But this 2024 draft class, of course, Michael Penix is you can put him in that as well, right? But 2024 draft class have a lot of big shoes to fill. Now we heard Raheem Morris go on record saying that the plan is to get the young guys on the field, but the truth is that he has no choice. Right? These are the guys that the Atlanta Falcons got to depend on this year, right? So this 2024 draft class, along with the 2025, right? Because I think most of us is really excited by the fourth draft picks. I'm not want to exclude Jack Nelson, but we know it's going to be a work in progress at the tackle position. Wherever they put him in offensive line. But when you're looking at the other four guys and Jalen Walker, Jay Pierce, Billy Bowman, Xavier Watts, those guys have potentially could be starters this year. And then you look at last year's class. We know Rook is going to be a starter. We already heard Nate Ali talking about Brandon Dorless, put him at an end, being able to do some things he was able to do at the University of Oregon. Um, and then Braylon Trice coming back, a guy that the Atlanta Falcons were really um, that I believe was going to be in the rotation last year if he haven't got hurt. So um, that's one of the reasons they went and got Matthew Judon because the Braylon Trice went down. So um, adding Braylon Trice to that mix with Jalen and James, and then Armor Ebiketie is going into his fourth year as a contract year, bringing in Leonard Floyd, right? Um, this 25, 24, and 2025 draft class is it's going to be fascinating to see because I mean we're talking about probably seven guys that the Atlanta Falcons don't really know what they can do in live action, right? They've seen them in practice. They got potential what they think can do, but when the bullets start to come down range and things like that, what are these guys going to be able to do, right? And guys that you got to depend on, right? It's not guys that you can bring along slowly. No, these guys going to be X to start deliver now, right now. For the guys in 2024, we always hear about the old cliche, you're going from year one to year two, should be better. You got your routine down, things like that. The only problem is those guys can get a lot of reps, right? And a lot of times that's what you need. You need active reps. So, from Michael Penix Jr., not having reps with his guys, hopefully he got a lot this offseason to be able to build that chemistry from that standpoint. But guys like Brendan Dorless, not having a lot of reps in meaningful games. Um, Rook not having enough reps in meaningful games. Braylon Trice not having any reps in meaningful games. So this is going to be huge, right? And the real interesting thing behind all the play on the field is general manager Terry Fontenot, because this is his class. These are his two classes, right? And he need for these two classes to hit, right? People keep saying he's on the hot seat. You know, um, he's going into his what fourth season, fifth season, um, as the Atlanta Falcons general manager, and have not sniffed the playoffs. Right? They've been there. They've been competitive. Right? I still say it's a quarterback play for the most part, but this is his draft class. This is his legacy so far as the Atlanta Falcons general manager. Right? You can go back and look um, at some picks, and you can be happy about some picks. Right? You did good on B. John Robinson, Drake London, right? Tyler Algier, um, Matthew Bergeron, right? You can be happy on those guys. Some of the free agents you brought on, Jesse Bates the third, you know, bringing in Caden Ellis, Darnell Mooney. I mean, so you got some wins there. You got some wins, but the whole thing say you building through the draft. The draft is where he needs to build his legacy. And I think the 2024 and 2025 draft class will all intents and purpose, kind of tell Terry Fontenot, um, tell the story of Terry Fontenot here in the Atlanta Falcons. If these two classes can hit specifically in this year, now the crazy thing about it, usually when you draft class, you say, well, we won't really know for another 2 or 3 years if they hit. But he's running out of time, so he needs some of these guys to hit right away, and we need them to hit right away because they're going to play significant roles here with the Atlanta Falcons. So um, I just think it's interesting, storylines to think about. Putting all these young guys. Atlanta Falcons have a young team um, that has the potential, right? That's why when we talk about this team during the offseason, I think it's more about the coaching staff than the players on the field, right? Because they got to put these guys in position to be successful um, right away, right? You can't have guys making a lot of mistakes because when they're thinking too much and things like that. You hear Jared Obrick say we're gonna make them play fast and physical. I know you guys heard that before, but that's the plan, and I think it's really important for these young guys to be able to do that because they haven't had a lot of experience, but they talented. So just do what you do best, and on a decent ball, go get ball. Right. That's the end of the day what you're gonna do. I mean, there's some brilliant offensive coordinators out there. It's going to try to, you know, make these guys think, but they just need to read and react, be able to do those kind of things. And I believe if they're able to do that, I think everything is going to be fine. But this is going to be a fascinating year for these two classes, right? I know we try to look at one class at a time, but unfortunately, we didn't get to see last year's class, right? For all intents and purposes, like they had a redshirt year, almost, right? Um, I maybe by design because if you look at the last year um, team, it was a lot of veteran guys there, so these guys could sit back and learn. Right, they did not have to um, be counted on right away. Well, unfortunately, this year that's not the case. These guys are the ones that the Atlanta Falcons gonna have to really depend on to be able to make something happen, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The offense is so different. We just talked about Michael Penix and the weapons he have. These guys, you look at the offensive line, they've been there forever with each other. You got the offensive pieces has been there. So the offense looks good. And so maybe we want to depend on offense to be able to pick up slack. But at the same time, defense got to be able to deliver. Um, the defense need to be in the middle of the pack this year, right? They don't can't be in the bottom third, 23rd, anything like that. They need to be in the 15, 16 range of, you know, top 15 defenses in the league. If they able to do that with these young guys, sky's the limit. And then we can tip our hat off to Terry Fontenot, and the coaching staff because I think it go hand in hand. Um, and I started to talk about people being on hot seats because Raheem just won his second year. Um, and like I said, like for every season, and this goes for any sport, right? You have to look back and look at the reasons why teams didn't make it. Then just to see, right, why they didn't win. And excuse me, to Raheem Marvin's defense, right? Um, it's the fact that the quarterback play was so bad. Now you could say, hey, well, he should have went ahead and make a quarterback change. But when you pay somebody $108 million and $100 million guaranteed, you shouldn't be so quick to pull the trigger because then the owner looking at you like, man, you just had me pay this guy $108 million and you pulling the trigger on him already, right? They look bad. So they had to give Kurt the opportunity to try to fix himself. Unfortunately, he was not able to do that. So I don't want to make any excuses for Raheem Morris, but you know the quarterback play was not good. Those 4 games, and one of the games, I think the Aints game, right? If Younghoe Koo make kicks, I think we probably win that game. All right. Um, the Commanders game, if we make a kick, we don't even go to overtime. All right. Um, and that was not like it was. I think it was a 54-yard kick. Right. Guy just didn't have enough leg. Right. So, but that's personnel. So I'm not making excuses, and I know everybody want to go back to that game, but like, well, if he would have called a timeout, maybe we could have got closer and then kick. I got it. I'm tracking, but at the same time, it's so many things that um, when we look at the coaching staff, I, to me, when you look at this 24 and 25 draft class, they're the key for these guys to having success, right? And I really do believe that. All right, there's one last thing I want to talk about, guys. Before I get up out of here today, because I'm excited. I'm ready to actually get into this season. I know you guys are too. I mean, it's just I can't wait. But it's one thing that I did not talk about the other day, and I kind of feel bad about it because like when I said when I put up my concerns for the season and the storylines, and I talked about the offensive side of the ball and I talked about defensive side of the ball, but I did not talk about special teams, right? And I'm kind of sad about that because I always talk about special teams. You guys know me when I do my three keys of victory. Special teams is always there, and I can honestly say that we lost some games because of our special teams last year, and and for me to not to mention that when I talk about concerns, just not good, right? So I really want to just talk about that real quick, and then I'm gonna get up out of here and see you guys on Wednesday, the day before these guys get the kickoff training camp, right? So we talk about special teams. So let's start off with the field goals, right? We missed 12 field goals last year, right? Um, I know, like I said, I know one game particularly that New Orleans Aints game, we probably should have won that game, right? Younghoe Koo missed 3 field goals in that game. I think we lost by 4 points, if I'm not mistaken. You can correct me on that. But if we could have just wanted to kick the field goal, make 2 of those field goals, we win the game. Um, like I said, I mentioned the Commanders game earlier. We kick a field goal there, we win the game. Um, now, but then if you look at was it Thursday night football? Thursday night football game, we make a field goal and we go in overtime, right? So I guess you got to take the good with the bad, but special team was not good last year, right? Um, our return game was non-existent. That's why they brought in Jamal Agnew, right? So you see that the Atlanta Falcons recognize that some of the things they had to do. They brought in two more um, great special team players um, that I think that's going to help out tremendously. We do have our Pro Bowler and Cardell Hodge coming back, but I think he's trying to go for that number 4 receiver spot more this year. Um, but you know, um, special teams guys, it's we got to be able to not think about special teams. And I think that's where I was the last time I was talking about this, right? Because you were like, when you talk about special teams a lot, that means they're not doing what they're supposed to do, right? And and I love the way Dion frames it when he talk about special team. He said it's called special team because you're supposed to be special, right? You're supposed to do special things on special teams, and that's not what we've been seeing. You know, um, we had some special plays last year. I can't say that block punts and things like that. A muff punt for a touchdown in the New Orleans game. Beginning of the season, but overall, guys, the special teams has to be better. Return game, right? That's why they brought in Jamal Agnew. This whole dynamic kickoff. I don't think the Atlanta Falcons, you know, did anything good with that last year. Um, so it's that's going to be key, right? They did bring in competition, um, Young Waku and bring in Craig in. So we're going to see what he's going to be able to bring to the table. See if he's going to push Young Waku. See if Young Waku come back 100% healthy. That's going to be interesting to see. Um, but when you think about special teams, if you don't talk about special teams, you're like, okay, special teams doing good. We got no muff punts. We got no block kicks. Um, we making all our field goals, right? We can depend on if I get to the 35, 40, that's automatic three. I know you guys remember the Matt Bryan years, right? We just knew we get to a certain spot, it's three, man, at least three on the board. And kind of felt that way for Young Wei Koo for a while, but lately that has not been the case. Hopefully, it was the injury that you know that caused him to not be where he needed to be. And you know hitting that 93% that he was one of the most accurate kickers in NFL history, until last year. So let's see, can he get back to that, or if Craig can push him out the door and we have a new kicker on special teams. So you know that's what we're going to see, right, guys. So it's almost time for us to actually have something to talk about, right? We've been just twiddling our fingers for the last 5 weeks, and the time is here. The time is now. The season is ready to go. I know everybody can't wait to September the 7th. That's the first game of the season where Atlanta Falcons need to make a statement in the NFC South when they take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting to see. All right, tune in on Wednesday. It's on training camp eve. We'll come back and we'll discuss some more. Definitely want to hear from you guys. Give me your input. But I definitely like to get your thoughts on how important you think this season is for Michael Penix Jr. Do you think he's going to pass it with flying colors, or you think he's going to have some ups and downs like all young players do in the NFL? Also, your thoughts on the last two classes for the Atlanta Falcons, where they are going to be highly dependent upon this year, on the success of this team. So, um, please put your thoughts and comments in here. Please um, share and like and have more Falcon fans come in and kick it with me. It's going to be an exciting season. I know you guys are excited. For everybody that's going to be out there Saturday, please hit me up if you see me, and we can talk some more in person about these Atlanta Falcons. This is your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. Peace.